The citadel rose like a bruise against the night. Black towers, blue fire on the ramparts, windows holding their breath. Vespera never slept. It waited. As the gate chains rattled and the portcullis lifted, Elira Nocturne rode under the arch, where frost clung like old vows to iron. 2 escorts in dusk-grey livery flanked her. Faces closed, horses steaming. Somewhere above, a bell tolled 13. An hour that did not exist and yet insisted on being heard. If that first heartbeat caught you too, stay with me. This is where mercy turns to madness, and love begins to defy death itself. Subscribe for more forbidden fates. And tell me in the comments, if you were her, would you have saved him? Or let the vampire king die? She dismounted before a door that swallowed torchlight. The taller escort touched 2 fingers to the crescent sigil over his heart and said, voice careful, the king will see you now. It sounded less like invitation than confession. Inside, a corridor of basalt and bone-white sconces. Silence ran ahead of them like a servant. They passed rooms with closed doors, a chapel smelling of salt and ash, a balcony thrust over night, as if the palace wanted to argue with the moon. Every breath Elira took tasted faintly of iron, as if the air had bled and dried here a long time ago. They stopped at a final set of doors carved with wolves. The escort knocked once. The wood answered, not the man behind it. Enter, said a voice like cold water poured into a warm glass. The chamber was empty of luxury and heavy with restraint. A long window bared the sky. A brazier stood unlit. A single table, a single chair, a single bowl sending up thin steam, the only softness in the room. The man at the window did not turn as they entered. The light turned toward him. He wore a plain dark coat, gloved hands bracketed on the sill, hair the color of ravens under snow. When he finally looked back, the torches leaned, subtle, instinctive, like flowers remembering the sun. Vasrin de Aurelion, king of the night wreath. Elira expected a monster, a mouth of knives. She met a face that had forgotten how to rest. His eyes were bright iron. They had seen too much blue fire. Moon breathed, he said quietly, and her escorts flinched, as if the name itself were not for mortal tongues. My name is Elira, sir, she said, stepping forward. She did not kneel. Her knees had learned long ago, that the floor did not always deserve them. You sent for a healer. He smiled with about 2 teeth of humor. I was told the best of them refused citadel work, so I sent for the one who doesn't call dying a sin. She set her satchel on the table. Dying is a condition, she said, opening vials, linen, instruments worn smooth by use. Like winter, like grief, it happens to us, not because of us. Even kings, especially kings. The escorts withdrew, the door sealed with a hollow thud that sounded like a settled argument. Elira crossed the floor and stopped an arm's length from him. Up close, the wrongness rose off his skin like heat of cold glass. Not sickness, not rot, mismatch, body-making dawn where night had written itself into the bones. May I? She asked, lifting her hand. He stripped the glove from his right hand, and then the silk from his throat, with a soldier's economy at her. Beneath his collarbone, the covenant mark lay like a coin pressed under skin, a crescent bitten out of a small sun. It was dull as old pewter. Elira placed her palm over it. The room inhaled, torches tilted. The thin steam from the bowl thickened. The window's frost pattern shivered and reknit into something like script. Under her hand, the mark warmed, as if someone inside him saw a morning worth rising for. Vasrin's breath left him in a ragged sound he didn't intend to make. Elira had heard that sound in birthing rooms when a woman felt the first true urge to push. Pain braided with purpose. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice lower now. "Convincing your blood to remember its home," she said. "You've been spending yourself to keep something else asleep. Your body is punishing you for charity." "Charity," he repeated, dry. "Seren calls it sacrament." "He would," she murmured. "Does it matter what we name it if it kills you?" He almost laughed, then didn't. "Aurelians aren't permitted to die improperly. We fade in service. We write ourselves thin." His gaze flicked to her mouth as if a question lived there. "And you?" "I keep things that want to go," she said simply. "Sometimes they go anyway." The mark under her palm throbbed once. Heat, light, a pulse that was not blood. In the low brazier, coals that should have been dead glowed dull red, then gold. Elira kept her hand steady. She counted her own breaths like stitches. When she lifted her palm, the skin over his mark shone faintly a moment longer, then dimmed. He stood straighter without meaning to. The lines around his mouth didn't soften. They unclenched. He looked at the world as if it had moved half a step closer. "Better?" she asked. He swallowed. The sound was almost human. "I haven't heard that bell without pain in months." "What bell?" "The one that tolls when my heart remembers I borrowed time." The bowl on the table steamed fuller. Elira turned from him too quickly. The world tilted. She caught the edge of the chair and breathed through a wave that felt like standing up too fast in deep water. Her stomach lurched. She clapped a hand to her mouth, stumbled to the brazier and retched. Nothing at first. Then a wash of bile flecked with silver dust. Vasrin reached her in 2 strides. He didn't touch her. He hovered with a practiced restraint that smelled faintly of winter apples, iron, snow. "What did you take?" he asked softly. "So I could have this?" She wiped her mouth with her wrist. "Nothing," she read. "Something. I don't know the word. It will pass." "What do you call dying?" he had asked. "A condition," she had answered. "What do you call this?" he asked now. "A bargain," she said, and didn't look at him when she said it. Silence arranged the room more carefully. Through the window, Vespera held its breath. The moon looked close enough to steal. "You expected a monster," he said. "I expected a man pretending not to be one," she said, and finally turned, mouth wiped clean, eyes steady. "I was wrong twice." He smiled with that same reluctant curve. "What am I then?" "Someone who refuses to leave the world worse than he found it." He looked away, as if the compliment had light he didn't yet have a place for. "The high priest will want to examine you," he said. "He likes cataloguing phenomena." "I'm not a phenomenon," she said too quickly. "I'm a person who knows where to put her hands." "Armor," he said lightly, not unkindly. "Yours fits better than mine." She gathered her things. The room had warmed enough that her breath no longer ghosted. She repacked the linen and vials with the care of a woman who knows that order keeps panic from putting its teeth in the wrong place. When she tied the satchel, the leather thong snapped. Vasrin took the broken ends from her and retied them with a sailor's knot. His gloveless fingers brushed hers. The torches leaned again. "It'll hold," he said. "For how long?" "As long as it needs to." They stood too close for 2 heartbeats, then 3. He seemed about to say something unkingly. He didn't. He set the satchel on the table and stepped back to the window, not to look out, but to give her space to stand upright without witnesses. "Elira," he said, tasting her name like someone who hasn't eaten in a while, and is not sure if this is food. "Why did you come?" "Because your letter said please," she said. "It didn't. It did to me." He turned then fully, as if that answer had more light in it than the room could carry. "If you cannot give life," he said carefully, like laying a relic down, "I'll give you mine." She flinched. It was small and it was everything. Do not make a vow in a room with listening walls. "They all listen," he said. "The difference is whether we're ashamed later." "Kings don't get to be ashamed later," she said. "They get to be blamed." "I can be both," he said. And there was weary humor in it, the kind that survives sieges. A knock. The doors opened without waiting for permission. High Priest Seren Vale entered with 2 attendants, and the smile of a man who had watched too many people kneel and called it piety. His robes carried the scent of salt and smoke, and the cold ash that holds on after the fire makes its point. "Your Majesty," Seren said, inclining an exact degree. The bell tolled. "We feared, His gaze lit on the brazier's waking coals, on the warmth in the window frost, on the healer straightening from the chair with a wiped mouth and an expression that refused to be catalogued. "So the experiment has begun." Elira said nothing. She put her satchel strap over her shoulder, tested the knot Vasrin had tied, and found it held. Seren's eyes flicked to the dull shine still lingering under the king's collarbone. His smile fanned. "Moon-breathed indeed," he murmured, almost to himself. "We will require a blood assay, of course. And a catechism. Too many spirits call themselves blessings when they are only hunger in silk." Vasrin's tone cooled. "The healer is my guest." "The covenant is older than guests," Seren replied smoothly, "and older than kings." Elira met the priest's glance and let him see exactly how much she cared for the age of rules that forgot why they were born. "Assay your own blood first," she said, gentle as clean steel. "If it's free of fear, I'll give you some of mine." Seren blinked slow, as if memorizing a problem. "We will speak later," he said, which meant we will try to put you somewhere. "You will speak when I ask you to," Vasrin said, which meant not now. The attendants retreated as if the floor were thin over deep water. Kerin bowed again, more shallowly, and withdrew. The doors closed. The listening walls leaned closer. Elira exhaled. "You shouldn't anger your priest for me." Vasrin looked tired in a new way, relieved. "He was angry long before you," he said. "You are the thing his anger will accidentally fix." "What does that mean?" "It means you reminded me to be a person," he said, and turned his face to the window as if to hide that such a thing could cost. They stood in a silence that did not feel like punishment. The brazier ticked. The window frost finished writing whatever poem it had been composing and held still. "Eat," Elira said at last, nodding to the bowl. He obeyed without comment, as if healing were a command he could respect. Steam ribboned. He set the bowl down half empty, a better fraction than any physician had wrestled from him in months. When he looked back at her, his eyes were less iron, more sky before snow. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "I will if you promise not to die in the meantime." "I will if you promise not to go where I cannot follow." They both pretended those were ordinary bargains. Elira turned for the doors. Her hand was on the latch when the bell tolled again. 13, soft and wrong. And something beneath the citadel answered. A pulse rose from the foundations, cold and luminous, the way a lake under ice might hum if it had a throat. Vasrin's head snapped toward the floor, as if he could see through it. Elira felt it in her chest, a hollow breath inhaling where no lungs lived. "What is that?" she whispered. "My work," he said, already moving, already almost gone. "And mine," she said to no one. And the door opened onto a corridor that suddenly remembered how to be afraid. The night after the 13th bell, the citadel forgot how to breathe. Vespera's towers were silent, but every mirror fogged, as if something inside them exhaled. In the king's chamber, Vasrin d'Aurelion did not sleep. He watched the healer's chair, still turned toward the brazier, as if her presence had burned an outline into the air. The brazier still held the same coals she had touched. They hadn't died. Elira dreamed of water that glowed like fire. In it floated a single silver thread, and when she reached for it, the thread coiled around her wrist and whispered, not in words, but in memory. A man's heartbeat, a pulse she should not have known. She woke with her fingers gripping her chest. The dawn was grey and unconvincing, as if the sun was afraid to look directly at her. When she poured water into the basin, her reflection blinked a moment slower than she did. By the time she reached the infirmary court, whispers were already waiting. The king walked the eastern wall last night. The king spoke to the walls. The king bled light. No one mentioned her name, but every eye that dared to meet hers looked as if it wanted to ask, "What did you do to him?" Elira ignored them all, setting her satchel on the marble table, grinding herbs, counting her rhythm in the rasp of pestle against stone. The act of making medicine had always steadied her, proved that something could still be repaired with enough pressure and patience. She was measuring out tincture when the door opened. He came without guards this time. Vasrin stood in the threshold like an apology the world didn't know how to refuse. His collar was open. Faint light bled from beneath his shirt, that same dull mark now pulsing with slow rhythm. "Your Majesty," she said, tone clipped, trying to sound as though her own pulse hadn't recognized him first. He stepped inside. "The High Priest says my recovery is unnatural." Seren would call rain unnatural if it didn't ask for his permission to fall. That almost drew a smile. Almost. "He wants to study you." "He'll have to find me first," she said. He looked toward the window. "He already has eyes in your corridor. The walls tell him who walks where. Then let them tell him I'm busy saving his king." "Saving," he echoed. That word tastes optimistic. Her voice softened. "You slept?" "No." "Eat." He tilted his head. You should have been a priest. You ask questions that sound like confessions. I ask because I care whether you survive. Then you're already dangerous, he said. Silence braided between them, quiet but alive. She turned back to her vials. Show me your pulse. He unbuttoned his sleeve. The veins glowed faintly beneath the skin, tracing patterns that pulsed in counterpoint to hers. When she reached out to touch, his skin burned, not with fever, but recognition. Her fingers brushed his wrist. For an instant, she heard two heartbeats, one his, one echoing inside her chest. Her eyes widened. What? He caught her wrist, gently but firmly. It's the same rhythm, he said. Since last night. I can feel it when you're near. That's not possible. It's happening anyway. He released her, but the air between them still thrummed, like a plucked string that refused to quiet. That afternoon, High Priest Terin stood in the great hall before the court of Vespera. His words slid like knives dressed as scripture. She bleeds silver, he declared. Her touch bends the laws. She carries the same pulse as the king. It is not healing, it is transference. She steals his illness, feeds it to herself, and calls it mercy. Gasps rippled. Nobles bowed their heads like flowers avoiding rain. Vasrin said nothing from his throne. He watched the court and wondered when faith had become so thirsty for punishment. When Seren finished, the king said only, "The healer's work will continue, and so will her protection." The priest's mouth hardened into a saint's smile. "Your Majesty's compassion is legendary." As Seren bowed, he slipped a parchment onto the floor beneath the dais, a page torn from an ancient volume. Vasrin waited until the hall emptied to pick it up. A title still legible amid ash-blackened script. Heartseed, the light that devours itself. Elira did not return to her quarters that night. She stayed in the abandoned conservatory above the east wing, the one with broken windows and vines that glowed faintly with old alchemy. She needed silence. But silence wasn't alone anymore. She could feel him. Somewhere below in his chambers, the same pulse beat steady and bright. When she closed her eyes, she could sense his exhaustion, his hunger, his ache. This isn't healing, she thought. It's entanglement. A soft rustle behind her. She turned. Her half-sister Sarah stepped from the shadows, the faint shimmer of half-turned fangs glinting under the moonlight that leaked through broken glass. "You shouldn't be here," Elira said. Sarah smiled faintly, eyes gold instead of red, half human, half changed. "And yet, here I am. That thing inside you hums like a hive. What have you done?" "I saved him." "No, sister. You linked him." Elira frowned. "You don't know that." "I can smell it," Sarah said, stepping closer, inhaling. "His blood lives in you now, and yours in him." Elira's throat tightened. "That's impossible." Sarah's voice softened, sad and sharp all at once. "Everything in this citadel is impossible, until it kills you." Down in the king's chamber, Vasrin stood before his mirror. He could see the reflection of the room, the bed, the brazier, but not himself. Only faint light shimmered where his body should be. And within that shimmer, two heartbeats echoed. He reached toward the glass. It rippled outward, and in its depths he saw her, Elira, asleep in the conservatory, silver light curling from her like smoke. "My healer," he whispered. "What have we done?" Before dawn, Elira woke to knocking. Not on the door from inside the floorboards. When she peeled back the rotten wood, she found a small sealed casket marked with the royal sigil. Inside was a vial of blackened blood and a note written in an unfamiliar hand. "The heart that binds two souls beats twice until one breaks. Choose which." As the 13th bell tolled again, she looked out the shattered window and saw Vasrin standing below, staring up. His collar open, light bleeding like veins of molten silver. And for the first time, Elira understood. This wasn't just a bond. It was a countdown. The pulse in her chest skipped once, then again, faster. She pressed a hand over her heart. It wasn't just hers anymore. The first disappearances began at dusk. A blacksmith's apprentice, a stable girl, 2 sentinels from the outer wall, all gone between one heartbeat and the next. When the guards found what was left of their torches, the wood was drained of color, like something had stolen the very warmth from it. By the time the moon rose, the whispers had a name for it. Hollows. Vasrin stood at the edge of the royal balcony, the wind pulling at his cloak. The city below flickered with ward lights that refused to stay lit. Each spark guttered out faster than the last. Behind him, Elira's voice cut through the silence like silk torn in half. "How long has it been happening?" He didn't turn. Too long, and too quietly. She came closer, her presence grounding him in a way that made it harder to lie. "These aren't natural," she said. "You know that." He looked down at his gloved hands. "They're born of the same magic that keeps me alive." That word, born, shivered through her. "Then you're saying, they're my shadow," he said softly. "Every time I bleed light to keep Vespera alive, something else wakes in the dark." Elira's stomach clenched. "And you didn't tell anyone? Would you tell them their king was creating the thing they fear most?" He turned to face her, the faint silver glow from his mark illuminating his jawline, the sharp exhaustion in his eyes. "That's why I sent for you. Not because I was dying, because everything else wasn't." The confession landed like frost. That night, Vasrin led the hunt himself. Elira followed against his command, wrapped in a healer's cloak and defiance. The forest outside the citadel was wrong. Colors muted, air too thin. The trees leaned toward them as though listening. When they found the first hollow, it wasn't a creature at all. It was a man-shaped absence. Skin like smoke. Eyes the color of dawn turned inside out. The thing screamed soundlessly and lunged. Vasrin moved faster than she could breathe, blade singing silver. When he struck, the hollow shattered into light. Beautiful, terrible, familiar. The afterglow painted his face in sorrow. Elira stared at the ground where the hollow had vanished. "That light!" He knelt beside it, fingers brushing the ashes that weren't ash. "Mine. You're killing pieces of yourself." "Wouldn't be the first time," he murmured. Another hollow broke from the mist. Then another, the clearing became a storm of light and shadow. Elira felt the energy ripple through her bones, the same vibration that now lived in her pulse. Vasrin's movements grew ragged, slower. With each strike, the glow beneath his skin dimmed. "Stop!" she cried. "You'll drain yourself." "I can't," he gritted out. "They come for you now." A hollow lunged from behind him, claws of darkness slashing the air. Elira didn't think, she moved. Her hand shot out, palm forward, and a burst of white fire leapt from her fingers. The hollow exploded into light. Vasrin turned, wide-eyed. "Elira, what did you—" But her knees buckled. The glow on her skin pulsed violently, her heartbeat skipping in wild sync with his. He caught her before she hit the ground, the bond between them burning like a live wire. Their heartbeats merged, then split again. Uneven, frantic. He lifted her face, whispering, "You shouldn't have followed me." She smiled weakly. "You shouldn't have been dying." For a long time, neither spoke. The woods hummed with residual energy, every root and leaf trembling in quiet awe. Back in the citadel, Elira stitched the wound on his arm where a hollow's claw had grazed him. The gash oozed light instead of blood, threading under her fingers like liquid gold. "This isn't just sickness," she said. "It's unraveling. Whatever you are, whatever this bond is, something's eating at it." Vasrin watched her work, eyes softer now. "Do you regret saving me?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze lingered on the wound, then lifted to meet his. "No, but I regret not knowing what it would cost." He reached out, brushing a curl of hair from her cheek. His touch left a faint glow on her skin. "Everything worth saving costs more than we can afford." The brazier flickered. She frowned. "That sound again." "What sound?" "Like a heartbeat, but under us." They both went still. The rhythm came from deep below the floor, steady, slow, and familiar. "It's the same pulse," she whispered. "Yours, mine, but older." Vasrin stood, the faint light under his collar pulsing faster. "No, it's something else." They followed the sound through corridors sealed for generations. Dust turned to frost the deeper they went. At last, they reached an iron door bound in runes. Vasrin touched the sigil. His mark glowed, and the door groaned open. Inside was a chamber filled with mirrors. Hundreds of them. None reflected their faces. Only swirling light. In the center stood a stone basin filled with liquid silver. And in that mirror surface shimmered dozens of hollow forms, whispering in voices made of wind, "Return what was taken." Elira stepped back. "They're speaking. They're remembering," Vasrin said. His reflection flickered, split into several versions, each older, each lonelier. Then one of the hollows turned its face toward her. Its eyes were bright as sunrise, and it spoke with her voice. "Help him before he forgets you." The chamber cracked. Mirrors shattered, light poured upward. Vasrin pulled her close as the silver liquid surged like a wave. When it fell, every hollow was gone. Only silence remained. But on his chest, the mark was brighter than ever. Too bright. Elira reached for him. "Your heart. It's not just mine anymore," he said hoarsely. And she realized with a chill that the glow had spread from his chest to hers. As they stared at each other, the light in the room dimmed. Only their twin heartbeats remained, echoing as one. Somewhere far below the citadel, a new heartbeat answered them. The halls of Vespera smelled of iron and lightning. Every candle burned low, every wall listening. Rumor said the king had begun taking blood again. Not to feed, but to live. But no one knew whose. Elira sat in the quiet of the royal infirmary, fingers trembling as she wrung a cloth soaked in herbal ash. The glows on her wrists hadn't faded. It pulsed faintly, synchronized with a rhythm she could no longer pretend wasn't his. She hadn't seen Vasrin since the mirror chamber. She could still feel his heartbeat echoing in hers, like a half-remembered song trapped in her ribs. When the doors opened, she didn't turn. She already knew it was him. "Your Majesty," she whispered. "Don't," Vasrin said softly. "Not here. Not when we've already shared breath." She turned then. He looked worse and better all at once. Ashen skin glowing faintly beneath the collar, eyes fever bright, exhaustion wearing its crown in silence. "You shouldn't be walking." "I'm not sure I'm still doing that," he said, faintly amused. "I just follow the pull, the bond, the chain," he corrected. He sat across from her, and for a moment the air forgot how to move. "I've spent my life feeding this city," he said finally, "giving blood to the walls, to the gods, to the council's hunger for power. Every drop kept them alive. But now I bleed, and they call it curse." She studied him. "And what do you call it?" He met her eyes. "A debt I'm ready to pay." He reached into his coat and withdrew a small silver vial, stoppered with a rune. "Take this, drink it." She frowned. "What is it?" "Part of me." "I'm not drinking your blood." "It's not blood," he said. "Not anymore." The glow under his collar flared as he spoke, light threading across his throat like veins of molten moonlight. "It's the last remnant of what made me a king. The part that keeps the hollows from devouring me completely." Elira's voice trembled. "If I take it, then the balance tilts. You live. I stay alive through you." "That's not healing, Vasrin. That's covenant," he said, interrupting her gently. "Not a ritual, a promise." He stood, and the shadows on the wall stretched toward him. "This is what the priests feared, that I'd find a reason to give my eternity to someone unblessed by their books." Her breath came uneven. "Why me?" His answer was immediate. "Because your mercy has teeth, and I trust it to bite me clean." He knelt, again, as he had that first night, unkinged by choice, not weakness, and held the vial between his palms. "Drink it, Elira, before the bond eats us both alive." She hesitated. Outside, thunder rolled low, like a warning whispered through mountains. The coals in the brazier turned blue. "If I drink," she said, "what happens?" His expression softened, tragic and certain. "You become the only part of me the world can't destroy." Her pulse thrummed in her ears. The scent of ash, pine, and rain clung to him like memory. She reached for the vial. Her hand shook as she unstoppered it. The liquid wasn't red. It was light, condensed and trembling, a sun dying in miniature. She met his eyes one last time, then drank. It burned like sunrise forced down her throat. The world exploded into silence. Every sound folded inward. Elira gasped, eyes glowing with a silver so bright it looked holy. The floor trembled. The runes carved into the walls lit up, one by one, ancient sigils screaming awake after centuries of dormancy. Vasrin caught her as she fell forward. Her heartbeat raced, and his followed, syncing perfectly. When she finally opened her eyes, the glow on his skin had dimmed, and hers burned brighter. He smiled weakly. So it's true. You were never meant to serve the light. You were meant to carry it. Her tears streaked silver down her cheeks. You've given me your curse. I've given you my throne, he said. By dawn, Vespera saw its first sunrise in 50 years. The snow on the towers turned gold. Citizens flooded the streets, staring skyward as if they'd been born blind. And in the great hall, the high priest Seren stood trembling, staring at the burned sigils now etched across the king's door. He whispered a single word, voice cracking with awe and fear both. Heartseed. Then, with trembling hands, he lifted his prayer to a god that hadn't answered in generations. Then break it open. Far above, in the king's chamber, Elira lay sleeping on the couch where Vasrin had placed her. Her veins still shimmered faintly. He watched her with something between reverence and regret. She'll hate me when she wakes, he murmured. A shadow behind him spoke, soft and wrong. Or she'll love you until it kills her. Vasrin didn't turn. What are you? The shadow smiled without a mouth. What's left of your light? What you fed the city all these years? You think it forgot you? He exhaled, exhausted. No, I hoped it would. In her sleep, Elira stirred, and the mark beneath her ribs glowed with a seed-shaped flame. Outside, the 13th bell began to toll again, and beneath the citadel, something old and luminous whispered back. The bond is sealed, but mercy always demands payment. Next, the heart seed will wake. And when it does, love itself will burn. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when light begins to devour its own heart. And tell me in the comments, if you were Elira, would you drink the king's blood to save him? The light didn't fade. It grew. By morning, the king's tower pulsed with faint luminescence visible from the outer city. The people called it a blessing. The priests called it blasphemy. But only 2 people in all of Vespera knew the truth. Light and shadow had found each other again, and the world was now learning what that meant. Elira woke to silence thick enough to choke on. Her lungs burned, her body hummed. The last thing she remembered was Vasrin's hands catching her as the world turned to gold. Now she lay on his bed, her skin fever-warm and radiant beneath the morning light. She sat up, and pain lanced through her chest. A mark glowed faintly beneath her ribs, shaped like a small seed made of light. It pulsed once, twice, then steadied into rhythm. Her own heartbeat had changed. It wasn't alone anymore. The sound of footsteps drew her eyes to the doorway. Vasrin stood there, unarmed, unguarded, his cloak thrown aside. The air around him shimmered faintly, as if reality itself was trying to hold him in place. You shouldn't be moving, she whispered. He smiled faintly. You said that last night. I ignored you then too. What happened to me? He crossed to her slowly, each step deliberate, as though afraid to startle whatever miracle was breathing inside her. The hot seed woke. The what? He sat on the edge of the bed, gaze fixed on the glow beneath her ribs. Long ago, before the first covenant, there was a seed of pure light, a fragment of creation itself. The gods used it to shape life. When they were done, They buried it beneath Vespera. We thought it was gone. We were wrong. She looked at him in disbelief. You're saying it's inside me? I'm saying it chose you. She laughed once, harsh and trembling. No, I'm a healer, not a vessel for whatever this is. Take it back. He met her eyes with quiet despair. I can't. I gave it willingly. Illyra stood, fury breaking through the fear. You had no right. I had every right, he said, rising too, voice low and steady. It was mine, my curse, my burden, my eternity, and I gave it to you. For what? For life, he said simply. You said you couldn't give it, so I gave you mine. Her mouth trembled. You're dying. I'm changing, he'd said softly. Every night, the hollows come closer. They're fragments of me, pieces of what I was. They hunt for what they lost. Illyra pressed a trembling hand to her chest, and now they'll come for me. Yes. A knock shattered the quiet. Seren strode in without permission, robe streaked with ash, eyes wide with something that looked too close to faith. I heard the bell, he said. I felt the quake. You found it, haven't you? Vasrin's jaw clenched. Leave, priest. Seren ignored him, gaze fixed in Illyra's mark. The heartseed, the divine core. It's inside her. Praise be the Lunarch, the dawn reborn in mortal flesh. Illyra stepped back, cold crawling up her spine. Don't you dare call me divine. The priest dropped to one knee, trembling with excitement. We must extract it, harness it before it consumes her. Vasrin moved before the priest could breathe another word. His hand closed around Seren's throat, lifting him clean off the ground. Touch her, and I'll end every god that answers your prayers. Seren choked, gasping out, You don't understand. I understand enough, Vasrin growled. The last time you tried to control divine fire, you burned a city. Illyra grabbed his arm. Let him go! Vasrin froze. Slowly, reluctantly, he dropped the priest. Seren collapsed, coughing, then looked up at her with reverence. Unferdant. You think you're still mortal, child? Look at him. You're unmaking the king himself. Illyra looked at Vasrin. His glow had dimmed further, the silver in his veins fading toward grey. She realized, with a horror that felt like guilt, that the brighter her light burned, the more his waned. Seren smiled grimly. Balance. One life feeds another. The gods wrote the law. You can't keep both. He rose unsteadily. If you want to save him, you must break the bond and return the heart seed to its source. And if we don't? Illyra asked. Seren's eyes gleamed. Then Vespera will shine so brightly that the world itself burns. That night, Illyra found Vasrin standing alone in the ruins of the old chapel. The shattered windows poured moonlight across the floor like spilled glass. You should have told me, she said quietly. He didn't turn. Would you have stayed? She hesitated. I don't know. Then I did right, he said. She stepped closer. Seren's not wrong. You're fading. So are you, he said softly. Every time we heal each other, the bond deepens. We're trading eternity for seconds. She moved beside him. Then let's make them count. Vasrin looked at her, really looked. Not as the healer who had defied his priests, not as the mortal who carried the divine, but as the one person who had refused to worship or fear him. He brushed a hand along her cheek. Mercy will kill you. Then let it, she whispered. At least I'll die choosing it. They stood together in the hollowed chapel, the moon blazing above them, the mark between them pulsing like a shared heart. Outside, the city trembled, shadows gathering at the walls. The hollows were coming again. And deep beneath the citadel, the ancient voice of the heartseed stirred. Only through surrender shall the world be remade. Vasrin turned toward her, eyes silver and sad. It's begun, he said. The seed's waking faster than I thought. Elira's mark flared, blinding for an instant. When the light dimmed, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Glowing gold. The palace had forgotten how to cast shadows. Light bled from every seam in its stonework. The air shimmered. Even the moonlight seemed uncertain of its job, paling before the glow rising from the king's tower. In the streets below, citizens whispered prayers to the dawn and curses to the same breath. They said the king had married the sun. They said the healer was no longer human. They said Vespera was burning from the inside out. Elira sat before the mirror, breath unsteady, skin glowing in soft pulses. Every beat of her heart was visible now, as if her chest were made of glass. The mark beneath her ribs had spread into filigree, silver vines curling along her sides, each line faintly alive. She pressed her hand against her reflection. The mirror rippled like water, showing flashes, Vasrin asleep, Serin kneeling in the chapel ruins, hollows stirring beneath the city, and beneath it all a sound, a low, rhythmic call that wasn't human, a heartbeat, the world's. Her reflection spoke in her voice, but not her tone. He's fading, Elira. Every sunrise costs him more. She staggered back, gasping. In the king's chamber, Vasserin stood before the balcony, his reflection gone entirely. His form wavered faintly, light leaking through the seams of his body like candle flame escaping cracked glass. When Elira entered, he turned sharply, as if he'd been caught doing something private, disappearing. Don't, she said softly. Don't hide it from me. He smiled weakly. Old habits. The crown teaches you to pretend you're still there, even when you're not. You're losing coherence, she said, voice trembling. You're turning into what I once fought. He finished for her. A ghost with a crown. Elira crossed to him and caught his wrist. His skin flickered cold, then hot. Then let me fix it. You can't. I can try. Her glow flared, veins of light racing up her arms and across her chest, the seed under her ribs burning brighter. Vasrin's body solidified briefly, his eyes sharpening, his breath returning. But the moment her strength steadied him, pain ripped through her chest. He caught her as she collapsed, cradling her gently. You see? Balance. The gods built this world like a scale, too much mercy on one side. The whole thing breaks. She gasped, clutching his coat. Then let it break. Vasrin's voice softened. If it breaks, you die. And if you die, the dawn dies with you. Her eyes glistened, then let the world find another sunrise. Seren appeared in the doorway like a sermon given shape. His eyes gleamed wild. He's right, child. The light inside you wasn't meant to last. It's divine fire in mortal flesh. The only question now is whether you'll let it consume you or save us with it. Elira turned to him, shaking. And how would you suggest I save you, priest? By finishing what he began, Seren said, stepping closer. The heart seed must bloom. It can only do so through sacrifice. Vasrin's tone turned lethal. Enough! Serenin's smile didn't falter. You think your defiance frightens me? You forget who wrote the laws of blood and light. I was there when you signed the first covenant, Vasrin. Elira froze. What? The priest's eyes gleamed silver. He never told you, did he? He wasn't just a king. He was the king, the first immortal sworn to bind light to blood, the first to promise eternity for the price of warmth. She looked at Vasrin. Tell me he's lying. Vasrin didn't answer. Her voice broke. Tell me. His silence was an answer. Seren's voice grew gentle now, the way rot hides under perfume. He gave you his light because he couldn't bear its hunger anymore. You're not his salvation, girl. You're his penance. Elira's knees weakened. She looked at Vasrinin as if seeing him for the first time. Not a dying king, but the architect of his own curse. Is that true? She whispered. Vasrin took a long breath. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. The first covenant was built to keep the world balanced. Light in the dark, dark in the light. But when I fell in love with the dawn itself... He looked at her, sorrow etched deep. I broke it. So I'm what? Your replacement? No, he said fiercely. You're the proof that it can still be remade. Her glow flared, bright and angry. You mean used? Vasrin's voice broke then, low and human and pleading. No, I mean loved. The air between them snapped. Every light in the room brightened until the walls themselves cracked. Seren stumbled back, covering his eyes. She's waking it fully. Stop her before... The rest was swallowed in radiance. Elira's body lifted from the ground, hair lifting, eyes blinding. The mark beneath her ribs blazed open into a shape like a small beating sun. Her voice came layered with something older than speech. I see it now. The heart seed isn't meant to be contained. Vasrin reached for her. Elira, don't... Every cage breaks, Vasrin, she said. Her voice both hers and not, even this one made of love. The light flared outward. Seren screamed, then silence. When the glow dimmed, the priest was gone. His robes nothing but ash. Vasrin fell to his knees, coughing blood that shimmered faintly. Elira collapsed beside him, the glow dimming in her veins. He caught her hand, trembling. What did you do? She looked at the rising dawn beyond the broken balcony. I freed us from the gods. He smiled faintly. And what will they do now? Her eyes, dull but resolute, met his. They'll come to take back what's theirs. As the sun rose for the second morning in Vespera's history, shadows fled the streets, but one shape remained, watching from the horizon. A figure cloaked in light darker than night. It whispered one word into the wind, Mother. Dawn came early that day. Too early. The city woke under a sky split by gold veins, trembling as if the sun itself were uncertain of its place. The wards around Vespera flickered, no longer powered by the king's blood, but by something wilder, her light. By midday, the citadel was a fever dream of worship and rebellion. Half the people knelt in the streets, praising the Queen of Dawn. The other half ran in fear, whispering, "The king's lost his shadow." Vasrin stood at the highest balcony, watching his kingdom fracture. His once iron composure was now something rawer, almost human. Elira stood beside him, pale, trembling, wrapped in a shawl that glowed faintly like an ember refusing to die. "They're afraid of what they prayed for," she said softly. He turned to her, exhaustion tracing every syllable. People always are. "They think I'm their salvation." He looked at her for a long moment. "You might be." She shook her head. Salvation doesn't steal life to exist. I can feel it, Vasreen. Every heartbeat in this city feeds the seed inside me. It's drinking them." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then we'll find a way to stop it before—" The doors behind them burst open. A dozen armored guards spilled through, their sigils bearing not his crest, but Seren's. The high priest strode in behind them, robes torn, eyes blazing with manic devotion. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "the council has spoken. You've broken the covenant. You are no longer king." Vasrin's hand went to his sword. "You presume too much." "I presume exactly as much as your silence allows," Seren said. "You gave the divine flame to mortal flesh. The balance is broken. The dawn must devour the dusk, or all creation dies." He lifted a silver thorn circlet, the ancient restraint once used to bind gods. "The court decrees your surrender." Elira stepped forward, light flaring around her. "If you touch him, I'll burn you down to memory." Seren's smile sharpened. "And there it is, the fire that will end us all." He nodded. The guards raised their weapons. Vasrin moved before any of them could draw breath. His blade sang through the air, clean and furious, each strike a heartbeat of vengeance. But there were too many. For every guard he felled, two more took their place. Elira tried to help, reaching for the light within her, but the seed recoiled. Every time she called on it, she felt it pull from the people outside, their joy, their warmth, their life. She gasped, clutching her chest. "Vasrin!" He turned, saw her faltering, and in that hesitation, a spear found its mark. The blade sank into his side, glowing with priest-forged silver. He dropped to one knee, blood pouring like melted moonlight. Elira screamed. The light inside her erupted, blinding the room. When the radiance faded, every soldier lay still. Only Tseren remained, shielded by his thorned sigil. He looked at them both, one dying, one burning, and said softly, "This was never love, my king. It was contagion." Then he fled, leaving his weapon in Vasrin's chest. Elira crawled to him, hands glowing, trying to heal, but his body refused. The light repelled hers now. Two halves of the same current shorting out on contact. "Don't," he whispered. "You'll only hurt yourself." "I don't care," she cried, pressing harder. "I can't lose you." He reached up, brushing a trembling thumb along her jaw. "You were never meant to keep me. You were meant to surpass me." Her tears fell onto his chest, hissing as they touched his wound. "You said we'd find a way." "And we will," he murmured, smiling faintly. "Just not together." Then his eyes dimmed. His body shimmered, fragments of silver dust lifting from him like fireflies returning to the sky. Elira screamed his name, clutching his fading form until only his crown remained, half metal, half light. By nightfall, Karen's rebellion had claimed the city. The priest declared the Dawn heresy, branding Elira the false sun. Citizens who had once worshipped her light now fled it. The wards collapsed, hollows poured in from the woods, drawn by the glow of the heartseed. Elira wandered the palace in silence, clutching Vassarin's crown. Every corridor reeked of smoke and salt. The air trembled with distant screams. In the great hall she found the royal banners burned. Beneath them lay the bodies of those who'd stayed loyal, men and women who had believed the king's mercy was worth dying for. She knelt beside them, light spilling from her eyes. "I'll fix this," she whispered, "even if I have to burn the sky itself." At the heart of the ruined chapel, the heartseed pulsed through her ribs, responding to her vow. The ground cracked. The air bent. Outside, the hollow stilled mid-charge. The clouds opened like a wound. Every torch in Vespera flared, then died. Elira rose, hair lifting, eyes now gold instead of silver. "If mercy made me this," she said softly, "then let mercy end me." The hollows bowed. The dawn broke again, but this time the light didn't stop. It kept rising, spilling over the city until every shadow vanished. When the brightness faded hours later, the city was silent. Nothing moved. No breath. No sound. Only Elira remained standing in the ashes, crown in hand, whispering to the wind, "Come back to me." From somewhere far away, a voice answered, faint as memory. "I never left." The dawn that rose over Vespera was wrong. It wasn't golden. It was white, too pure, too endless. The kind of light that didn't warm but erased every tower, every blade of grass, every human cry turned ghostly under it. The world had been bleached of contrast, caught between heartbeat and afterlife. Elira stood at the center of it all, barefoot among the ash. The crown of the vanished king hung loosely in her hands. The heartseed pulsed beneath her ribs like a second sun, louder, heavier, more demanding with every beat. "You wanted mercy," a voice whispered behind her. She turned, and there he was, Vasrin d'Aurelion, the king of night, his body made of fractured light, as though eternity had tried to reassemble him and given up halfway. His eyes were the same, silver, steady, unbearably alive. "Vasrin," she breathed. He smiled faintly. "You kept your promise. You broke the sky." She ran to him, but when she touched his chest, her hand passed through. His form shimmered, insubstantial. "You're not really here." "Not in the way you want," he said, "but enough to finish what we began." She shook her head. "No, I can fix this. I can bring you back." "Elira, I can," she shouted, voice cracking. "If I return the heartseed, if I reverse it." He cupped her face with trembling light. "If you give it back, the dawn dies. If you keep it, you burn, Tuan." Her voice trembled. "Then what's left?" He smiled sadly. "Me. Thunder cracked above them. The white sky tore open, revealing a chasm of blinding gold. Through it descended figures made of woven light, the Eidolon court, the keepers of the covenant. Their voices merged into one divine echo. The balance has failed. The vessel is unstable. The king forfeited his eternity. The host must be unmade. Elira stepped forward, fists clenched. I am not your host. I am what you created and what you abandoned. The Eidolon's reply was calm and merciless. Creation does not argue with its maker. Vasrin's voice rose like a blade drawn in defiance. Then hear your maker's king. You bound me in chains of light, and I obeyed for 1,000 years. I gave blood for peace, shadow for dawn, but no more. He looked at Elira, eyes filled with fierce tenderness. You gave me back what you didn't know I'd lost. Choice. You would trade your realm for her? The divine chorus demanded. I would trade for Evert, he said simply. The sky shuddered. The Eidolon's light turned molten. Then eternity itself ends with your defiance. So be it, Vasrin thought. He turned to Elira, voice soft now. You once said you couldn't give life, but you already did, Elira. You gave it to me the moment you touched me without fear. Her tears burned down her cheeks, glowing silver. Don't do this. I have to. If I take the heartseed back into me, the bond will close. The light will die with me, and you'll live free. She shook her head violently. No, you'll fade. I was fading long before you, he said gently. At least now I'll fade into something worth remembering. He reached for her chest. The glow beneath her ribs flared, resisting. She screamed, gripping his wrists. It'll kill you. He smiled through the pain. It'll free us both. The heartseed rose between them, a sphere of pulsing light. Their shared glow illuminated every corner of the ruined city. Elira's heartbeat merged with his one last time. The Eidolon screamed as the bond reversed, divine order collapsing. Vasrin's body began to disintegrate, threads of light unraveling into the air. Elira clung to him, sobbing. Please, don't leave me again. He brushed his lips to her forehead, his voice fading to a whisper. Then remember me in every dawn. That's where I'll be. The heartseed pulsed once, then shattered into a rain of gold. The light swept outward, burning through the clouds, silencing the divine chorus, cleansing every hollow in its path. And when it was done, Vespera breathed again. The sky was blue. The sun was real. Elira lay in the center of the ruins, the mark beneath her ribs gone. The air was warm for the first time in centuries. She sat up slowly, fingers brushing over Vasrin's crown. Only a trace of silver dust remained where he had stood. Her voice broke in the quiet. You gave me your life. The wind carried his answer, soft and distant. Then live it. That night, when the stars returned to the sky, every one of them glowed faintly silver. The people said it was their king watching over them. Elira knew better. He wasn't watching. He was resting. And in her dreams, she still felt him, steady, quiet, alive. In every heartbeat of the world he left behind. As the final dawn rose, Elira stood on the balcony of the rebuilt citadel, crown in hand. Behind her, a child's cry echoed, soft, bright, alive. She turned toward the sound, eyes widening. The cradle beside her glowed faintly gold. Inside, the baby smiled, its eyes silver. The world remembered silence before it remembered sound. When light finally softened and color returned, Vespera was no longer a citadel of ash, but a city of gardens. The stone towers, once black as sin, now shimmered faintly gold at sunrise. Birds nested in their broken crowns. The wind no longer howled, it breathed, and at the center of it all stood Elira. She had no crown now, no court, no title. Her hair, once streaked with light, was silver as frost. Her body bore the quiet fatigue of one who had outlived destiny itself. Yet when she walked the rebuilt halls, the walls leaned inward, as though even stone wanted to listen. The people still whispered her name. Some called her Saint of the First Morning. Others called her the False Dawn. Elira called herself neither. She simply lived. In the months following the cleansing, she rebuilt the citadel as a sanctuary. The once royal throne room became a hospital. Children born with strange marks on their skin, tiny glowing crescents, seeds of warmth, were brought to her. She tended them gently, teaching their parents that light was not a curse. It was memory. At night, she wrote letters she never sent. Each one began the same way. My king, you said eternity would remember mercy. It does. She would fold the page, set it beside his crown, and sleep beneath the glow of 1,000 small lamps. One morning she woke to laughter echoing through the courtyard. It wasn't the laughter of adults. It was small, bright, whole. She followed it outside, her bare feet brushing the grass. There, a group of children chased fireflies moths along the fountain. A little boy stood apart from the rest, watching the sun rise with his head tilted. His eyes, clear silver, caught the light and gave it back. Elira's breath caught. She approached slowly, heart beating faster. What's your name, little one? The boy looked up, smiling with a calm far too old for his years. They call me Ashen, he said. Mama said I was found under the ruins the night the stars came back. Elira knelt, her hands trembling. Do you remember anything before that? He frowned, thoughtful. Only a dream. A man who said, if you cannot give life, I'll give you mine. Tears blurred her vision. She reached out, brushing her fingers through his hair. And what did you say? He smiled, the same gentle curve she had seen in another lifetime. I told him I'd wait for morning. The sunlight touched them both, warm and real. Years passed and stories twisted into legends. Bards sang of the Night King who gave his soul for dawn, of the healer who carried his light. But Elira knew the truth. It wasn't a tale of gods and kings. It was about two people who refused to let the world stay cold. When she grew old and her light dimmed, she asked to be buried beneath the willow tree at the edge of the citadel. The same place Vasrin had first whispered her name. And every dawn afterward, the tree glowed faintly at its roots, as if something below still remembered warmth. One evening, long after her passing, the boy Ashen returned to that same tree, grown now into a man. He carried the crown, half silver, half gold, and set it gently among the blossoms. Father, he whispered, Mother kept your promise. He looked toward the horizon where the last light of day met the first breath of night. The sun dipped, The stars began to wake, and for one heartbeat, both lights coexisted, equal. And in that balance, the world found peace. As the screen faded to dusk, a single line lingered in gold letters across the sky. He gave her his life. She gave it meaning. Then, faintly beneath the music, Vasrin's voice, soft as a memory reborn. The dawn is yours now.